Good morning and good afternoon to all. On behalf of the Friends of MEIS, I want to thank all the participants to this event, and especially I want to thank Nizza-Caplan, curator of the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, Abigail Rapoport, curator of the Jewish Museum of New York, and Rav Amedeo Spagnoletto, director of the MEIS Museum of Ferrara, for their presentation. The Friends of MEIS is a non-profit organization in the United States, and our mission is to promote in every possible ways the activities of the MEIS Museum of Ferrara with the American public. Unfortunately, until recently, the Italian Jewish history, art, and culture were very often very little known in the United States, even if the Jews have been in Italy for more than 2,000 years. And obviously, the cultural, political, and artistic exchange with the surrounding Italian society have always been very deep and significant. We can just think about how deep was the exchange in philosophical and even musical fields during the Renaissance or after the unification of Italy, how important were the Jewish politician or the Jewish intellectual and artist. Since its creation, the Jewish Museum of Ferrara, the MEIS Museum of Ferrara, has done a wonderful job in correcting this lack of knowledge with the Italian public. And now our mission is to help to do the same in the United States. For this reason, we try to organize public events, fundraising, and most of all, we try to facilitate in any possible way the student, the researcher, and even the general tourist who want to visit the museum in Ferrara and know better these fascinating stories of Italian Jews. So our presentation today is part of this effort, and we hope really that you will all enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do you hear me? I hope yes, please. Okay, do you hear
Yes.
me? Okay, thank you so much, Gianna, the advocate Gianna Pontegorgoli, Vice President of the MEIS Friends Association there in America. And is the one of our important ways of acknowledge our activities on the other side of the ocean. And also one of the vision of the reasons of the aim of your organization is exactly what you mentioned during these greetings with whom you opened our event. Now, thank you everybody. This event come out from a real something very, very special is the coincidence, the opportunity of having in the same moment two exhibitions devoted and focused on Purim. The one that is placed here in Ferrara, in the Museo Nazionale dell'Ebraismo Italiano e della Shoah, the MEIS here in Ferrara, and meanwhile also at the other side of the earth, it means in New York, at the Jewish Museum of New York, and Abigail is the curator of the Jewish Museum de New York. And so we thought that in the period of setting up and the display of these two exhibitions, we couldn't don't take the opportunity of having an event together. And therefore, this is the reason that we are this evening speaking about Purim, even if it's not the period of Purim. And furtherly because we spoke together with Anna Nizza, that is a curator of the Israel Museum there in Israel, and she, by a long time, is studying or researching about the Italian megillot, and therefore was also a good opportunity to include her, also because the idea of this event, of this meeting, came out with a talking with her there in Jerusalem a few months ago. We have by the beginning, because I thought that she couldn't at the beginning, but we have with us also Olga Melasecchi, that is a curator of the previous exhibition that took place there in Roma last year, and it's also the curator together with, let's see, we will see after the exhibition here in Ferrara, and therefore it's my pleasure to give her the floor of giving greetings about this event. And so, Olga, you are with us. Please take the floor and give the greetings. Open your microphone.
Yeah. Okay. No, okay. I was waiting for the permission.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. So thank you very much, Amedeo. I'm very, very happy to be here together with very important colleagues as you, Anna Nizza, Abigail. I loved so much our exhibition on megillot. And I'm very proud to be in this international context. So congratulations to everybody for the organization of this meeting. And well, just a few words to say hello to everybody and go on with the Zoom, with the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga Melasecchi. Your contribution to this, both exhibition as in Roma, as well here in Ferrara, is very, very deep, important, and therefore I really thankful. And right now, I would pass the floor to Abigail, presenting us shortly, in 10, 15 minutes, the exhibition that is held right now there in New York. Abigail?
Great. Thank you so much for the warm introduction. And just to echo Olga's comments, it's so powerful to be in such an international event like this one. So I'm going to share my screen and take you a little bit on a journey, actually, almost as if you were in the Jewish Museum in New York. Can you all hear me before I go on?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great.
We are seeing.
Great. So I'm going to give you an overview of this exhibition, the Book of Esther and the Age of Rembrandt, which is on view at the Jewish Museum through August 10th. It's 5 years in the making. I actually proposed this exhibition on the first Jewish Museum COVID era Zoom meeting 5 years ago. So I'm pleased to be able to present the results of that year, of the 5 years of the effort. So this exhibition is actually co-organized with the North Carolina Museum of Art in Raleigh, and it's traveling to North Carolina following its debut at the Jewish Museum. And then a condensed version will actually travel to the Gardner. So similar to your Megillah Esther exhibition, this also is a multi-prong exhibition. So let's get started. This exhibition explores a unique moment when the story of Esther, the Megillah, a tale of heroic resilience and survival for the Jewish people in the ancient Persian diaspora, deeply resonated in the 17th century Netherlands at large, especially Amsterdam. Amsterdam at this time, as many of you know, was a city shaped by its long own struggle for independence and a growing cultural diversity. And against this backdrop, Rembrandt and other great artists of his time brought Esther's story to life through their art, reflecting concerns of the time and helping to shape what was sort of a distinctly Dutch identity. At the same time, Jewish artists like Shalom Italia, whose work many of you know, created innovative megillot, which blended traditional Jewish forms with Dutch visual culture, mirroring a community that this time was actively adapting to and engaging with the world around them. And so artists, patrons, and audiences, Jewish and Christian alike, which is very surprising actually to the Jewish Museum's audience that Christian audiences are adapting Esther's story. They were drawn to Queen Esther in particular from the story, a young Jewish woman, an orphan, who rose to become queen of ancient Persia. And we all know the story. I'll just review the very basics in case some people don't. This story is set in the city of Susa or Shushan, capital of the Persian Empire, under King Ahasuerus, thought to be Xerxes I, who ruled over this sprawling empire in the 5th century BCE. When a genocidal decree threatened the Jews in the empire, Queen Esther risked her life by revealing her identity, her Jewish identity, to the king, essentially giving voice to the voiceless and ultimately securing her people's survival. As we all know, Esther's story is commemorated every year on Purim, read aloud from a scroll or a megillah in synagogues around the world. As this exhibition highlights, Esther scrolls of this period were lavishly illustrated, reflecting not only this artistic innovation, but also the new possibilities of Jewish life in Amsterdam. This is a community that could now celebrate Purim openly in ways that it would have been unimaginable only a generation earlier. While Esther's story is set in ancient Persia, its themes of courage and survival found fresh relevance in 17th century Amsterdam, a bustling, diverse city that had become a refuge for many migrants. Amsterdam attracted a remarkable mix of people around the same time, Sephardic Portuguese Jews reclaiming their Jewish faith after centuries of forced conversion and expulsion. Ashkenazic Jews at the same time are fleeing persecution from Central and Eastern Europe, and Christian immigrants are displaced by war, drawn by the city's tolerance and opportunity. What's interesting too for our story is that the Dutch Republic at this time was establishing new trade relationships with the Safavid Persian Empire. So exotic goods, textiles, and imagery from Persia flowed through Amsterdam, fueling this fascination with Persian culture. So it's actually not a coincidence that the Esther story in particular, with its Persian setting, would have resonated with this city. Esther's story really crossed religious and cultural lines, inspiring Christian and Jewish audiences alike. For the Sephardic Portuguese Jewish community, Queen Esther embodied the converso experience specifically, a woman who hides and ultimately reveals her Jewish identity at great risk. In Amsterdam, as I mentioned, this community could finally celebrate Jewish holidays openly, making Purim especially a poignant expression of this kind of reclaimed identity. For the Dutch, they're still forging independence from Spanish rule. Esther, for them, is symbolizing courage and divine favor. Many actually came to see their young republic as a New Jerusalem. So many scholars before me have actually explained how the Dutch are talking about Amsterdam as a New Jerusalem. They're comparing their hard-won freedom against the Spanish monarchy, really in comparison to Queen Esther and Mordecai's fight against the Persian Empire. This exhibition brings together a wide range of materials. So we have paintings, works on paper, everyday household objects, Esther scrolls, and we even have theatrical plays and productions. Together, they're telling how Esther's story lived not only in scripture, but through the broader art and culture of the time. By the 17th century in the Netherlands, biblical stories are becoming part of everyday art, secular art, and domestic life, with Esther being visually reimagined actually for everyday Dutch households. Here we see how Rembrandt, whose name we all know, helped bring these sacred narratives to life. So Rembrandt, of course, we all know, is known for his ability to capture human emotion through light and texture. What Rembrandt's also doing that's innovative, though, is he's showing Queen Esther as a Dutch woman. He is showing her as a woman of the street. He is often showing her modeled based on his own wife, Saskia. Here we see her clutching a scroll. In the image on the right, she's clutching the scroll, which is news about the decree of her own people. And the other hand, she is kind of clutching onto the chair. And I love that kind of tension, that kind of quiet moment that Rembrandt is choosing. What also made Esther's story accessible at this time was the art of printmaking, especially etching, which had recently transformed how images could actually be reproduced and shared. So in Rembrandt's Amsterdam, prints were circulating widely. People could actually own an image like this of Esther. Amsterdam was buzzing with printing. Newspapers, maps, pamphlets, and crucially, the Hebrew Bible were newly translated, printed, and available for personal use. So biblical images like Esther were everywhere in Christian and Jewish homes and in the broader visual culture of the city. So this visual world sets the stage for something new, which is Jewish artists reimagining Esther's story through ritual objects, especially through megillot. So in the same city that inspired Rembrandt's biblical portraits, Amsterdam also became a center of a new kind of Judaica, which is these lavishly illustrated Esther scrolls. Here we see a very special one by Shalom, which is in the Jewish Museum's collection in New York. Shalom was a Jewish artist, a printmaker. He's born in Mantua at a very young age. He goes to Amsterdam and he settles there in the 1640s. He quickly becomes this go-to maker of these Esther scrolls. He's kind of forming this market of Portuguese Jews who are interested in commissioning him to make these lavishly illustrated Esther scrolls. And you can kind of go on and on about the imagery here, but just notice how the story of Esther is nestled within these series of triumphal arches. These forms are echoing both the Italian Renaissance architecture of his hometown and also merging the contemporary Dutch cityscape of his new hometown. So for example, just above the arches, you can see Dutch cityscapes nestled into these Esther scrolls. Within these monumental settings, familiar characters from the story are appearing here: Esther, Achashverosh, Mordechai, Haman, kind of woven into the visual rhythm of these arches, which Shalom is creating. The effect is celebratory, it's dramatic, it's reinforcing Esther's triumph and the resilience of the Jewish community. What's interesting too is we know from inventories that megillot like this became prized possessions among specifically the Portuguese Jewish community. And actually, we know from inventories that most were stored in the homes in Amsterdam. They would have been brought to synagogue to follow along with the main reading of the Megillah at the synagogue. This particular scroll has an amazing story in terms of its ownership history and how it actually got to the Jewish Museum. It made its way from Danzig, which is current-day Gdansk, where the Jewish community housed a remarkable collection of Judaica in their grand synagogue. So we're looking here at a photograph from the Great Synagogue in Danzig. As war loomed in 1939, this community acted swiftly. They acted as custodians of their objects, and the synagogue had been marked for destruction by the Nazis, which you see here on the left, and it was soon obliterated. So in this amazing story, in a race against time, this community, with the help of the American Joint Distribution Committee, actually packed their Judaica from the synagogue, shipped them to New York for safekeeping. Specifically, they shipped these objects to the Jewish Museum, which was then housed in the library of the Jewish Theological Seminary. In the years after the Holocaust, the once vibrant community there was devastated with only a small remnant remaining. And an agreement was reached between the Jewish Museum and the community that if the community did not reconstitute in 15 years, the objects would remain at the Jewish Museum as a kind of legacy of the community. So in 1954, 15 years later, the objects remains in our collection. Of course, I like to pause history and say I wish the objects did go back 15 years later, but it is our responsibility as a Jewish museum to tell the story of this amazing community. And I'm proud that today this scroll stands next to the Rembrandts in the first section prominently in the exhibition in New York. And so Esther scrolls were not the only objects in Dutch homes as this exhibition shows. Her story is also featured in objects of the Protestant Dutch home. So for example, I'll show you a couple of examples. Here we see the Delftware panel, an object designed for home display to be hung on a wall actually. And the medallion at our left over here in the center shows the scene of Esther before the king, a moment that became especially popular amongst Dutch audiences as a symbol of her virtue and her moral courage. In the exhibition, you'll notice too, there's firebacks. Many people think these are part of our mansion. They're not. They're a generous loan to us from Utrecht, from a museum in Utrecht. And similarly, they feature that same scene of Esther going before the king. Esther also became an aspirational figure for women of the time. So here we see 3 Protestant royal women, which you see in this installation shot, each one commissioning the same artist, Gerrit van Honthorst, to portray their image as Queen Esther, complete with the scepter, with the crown, with the royal apparel. At left is Amalia van Salms, the wife of the Dutch governor, who was even described actually in contemporary 17th century writings as a second Queen Esther at the baptism of her own son. And so here is just a quick close-up of these 3 Protestant women with the quote above referring to her as a second Queen Esther. With Rembrandt's incredible portrait of a Jewish heroine, in the exhibition, we step into the story of Esther, and the next 2 sections of the exhibition explore the most popular scenes from the story for the Dutch. So on the one hand, the 2 most popular scenes are Esther preparing at her toilette, the moment before she goes to the king unsummoned, and the Feast of Esther, when she reveals her Jewish identity to save her people. And Rembrandt was the first to depict this toilette scene, which we can see here in the installation shot. This is in 1632 to 33. And then the next gallery shows how other artists are picking up on that scene. I should also note this is the first time a Rembrandt painting is actually on exhibit at the Jewish Museum in New York. So we're all very excited in New York. And so here we could just see this close-up image. We see Esther in her toilette, preparing to meet the king unsummoned, staring past the viewer. Rembrandt likes to kind of show the quiet moments, the kind of humanity over the action-packed drama scenes. We see papers in the backdrop, which interestingly, Rembrandt and contemporaries pick up on this. They often show Esther with a scroll or with a kind of leaflet of papers to highlight how she becomes the bearer of this news of the near annihilation of her people and how she steps up and speaks up for her people. And here I'm just showing you a couple of installation shots from the exhibition in New York, where you can see how artists following Rembrandt's 1632 image are picking up on these kind of props that become associated with Queen Esther. This pivotal moment of Esther going before the king is also featured on many objects for the home. So we have your book clasps on our left from the Rijksmuseum. We have the lid of a snuff box cover from the Victoria and Albert Museum, and a mishloach manot platter used for giving gifts of food and drinks to family and friends on the holiday, also featuring that similar scene. And so they're also all drawing on prince culture and the same prince in order to create this imagery on their objects. So the second favorite scene, as I mentioned, is that moment where Esther actually reveals her identity to the king at this banquet that she calls for. And so this is an installation shot. I'm trying to take you through virtually through this exhibition, but I do hope you can all eventually come in person. And so here's just a close-up. Here we see a painting of the Feast of Esther by Jan Lievens, a contemporary of Rembrandt, on our left-hand side. And if you notice, you'll see these kind of exotic elements. So you'll see how Ahasuerus wears this turban. There is a crown on it, so it's sort of this Europeanized turban. But he's also wearing a sash that would have looked like a sash from the Safavid Persian Empire, their new trading partner at the time. So on view in the exhibition, this painting is actually paired with a sash from the Met, which you see here. And it's also paired with this wonderful Rembrandt self-portrait where he's showing himself wearing that same sash around his neck, kind of experimenting with the kind of exotic guises of these biblical kings. Similarly, Judaica from the time is drawing on trade and these visual influences. So here is, I'm trying to show megillot that are highlights throughout the exhibition. This is this magnificent one from the British Library that some of you might be familiar with. And at the margins, what's really interesting, at the very bottom, you might notice there's elephants and rhinoceroses and palm trees. And so these are all animals that were not native to Amsterdam at the time. They were actually new to European audiences. And so the Megillah really is reflecting or nodding to Netherlands' role as this global trading hub. I should note that the illustrator here was quite sophisticated in his illustrations in the story, interspersing commentary and actually verses from the Megillah just above the imagery. And so it's this really kind of nice scroll that shows that dual influence of Jewish life and erudition with the kind of general Dutch culture, especially the interest in the exotic. Here's another highlight. This is a wonderful Megillah by Abraham de Chavez, really richly decorated. He was a talented Jewish engraver. And if you look close up, you can see that it's actually filled with flora and fauna. You have birds, you have peacocks, you have animals of all kinds nestled around the ink on parchment text of the Megillah. Interestingly, Queen Esther also came to life on the premiere stage in Amsterdam. So here's an installation shot from the final section of the gallery, which is about, it's actually my favorite. It's funny, this is the latest element of my research to develop, but probably the most exciting, I think, was seeing Queen Esther's sort of image and story appear on the popular stage at the time. And so what we're looking at in this mural backdrop is an image of the first public theater, the Schouwburg, opening its doors in 1638. And lo and behold, one of the first plays performed at the theater upon its opening was based on the story of Esther. And so on display in the exhibition, we have several different plays by different Dutch playwrights based on the story of Esther. It became a favorite. It was often adapted actually from Spanish dramas, and actually also showed an interesting influence from Purim plays, from Purim comedies of the time. And I'll just show you one or two highlights. I know I don't have so much time to talk, so I'll wrap up soon. Here we see a cast list for Esther, or the Deliverance of the Jews, by the Dutch playwright Johan Serveters. And what's a highlight here is both the play and what we're looking at. So the play was performed annually for a couple of years. It became quite popular. And this is a really interesting object because it's actually the first cast list, the first actors list for the first performance of this play. And what's highlighted in orange is actually the character of Esther, Hester. And next to it, we can see a real woman was actually playing in this role. And why that's interesting is because at this time, there was a ban of women to actually be actresses on the stage. So this might be one of the earliest appearances or pieces of evidence where we see women involved as actresses on the stage. Artists like Jan Steen, working in the 60s, were inspired by these theatrical productions. They incorporated the stage sets, the costumes, into the kind of storytelling of their paintings. So we think Jan Steen would have been familiar with the story of Esther plays and would have actually been inspired by them in creating these images. Members of the Sephardic Jewish community were essential actually to Amsterdam's theater life as well. Esther's story was a subject of Purim plays and parodies that were performed in Jewish homes and community spaces. So here we can just see one example on our right, which is a Purim parody with Dutch engravings actually pasted into it later on. And these were printed and made by Sephardic Jews. And our left, we're actually looking at this Feast of Esther engraving. And what's interesting about it is the inscription at the very bottom tells us that it was dedicated to Baron Manuel de Belmonte, who was a well-known supporter and patron of the theater at the time. And I think that the most powerful expressions of this kind of idea of reclaiming their Jewish identity for the Portuguese Jews was something called the Dotar Society. This was a charitable society established in Amsterdam in 1615. And it was actually funded by members of the Portuguese Jewish community. So what was it? Dotar essentially awarded dowries. The word dotar means dowry in Spanish. Awarded dowries, goods or money provided by parents or guardians, to young Jewish women who were orphans seeking to marry and actually settle down in Amsterdam. And so these are all objects that are on loan to us from the Dotar Society, still used today annually on Purim for the lottery. And so what would happen is they would actually use these objects to hold a lottery to give out dowries to these young women. And this was not a quiet act of giving. It was really this joyful lottery held on Purim in the Portuguese synagogue, still taking place today. And I'll just show you one close-up before I conclude soon. And so here we actually see on the right-hand side of the top, this is a petition. And so each year on Purim, the petitions of these eligible young women were drawn from a silver tureen, and that's this exact one, placed on top of this dazzling red silk and velvet cloth you see here, which is meant to adorn the bima, or the teba, as they call it in the Portuguese community, the reading platform in the center of the synagogue. And the Dotar Society members actually pull out these petitions in order to allot a dowry. And it's just interesting to think about the resonance of these young women, many whose names are actually Esther, and Queen Esther herself, and how they had to hide their Jewish identity. And also, of course, how they're taking initiative in their own lives and establishing their own new lives. In the exhibition itself, you can actually read original petitions that reveal these different poignant stories. So, for example, you'll encounter stories of Esther Fonseca from the 17th century, of Esther Mendes Doval, of Esther Preta. One just brief example I'll show is by Clara d'Almeida, whose letter you see up here. You can see it starts with Clara d'Almeida. She wins her dowry in 1667 and immigrates to Amsterdam from Bayonne. And she talks about her story. She talks about her grandparents being killed in the Inquisition in Spain, her brother being executed in Santiago de Compostela for his loyalty to Judaism. And we know that she applies in 67. By 73, she actually gets married. And this is just one interesting instance of the several stories we tell in the exhibition. So I'm probably way over time, so I will conclude. So, you know, whether through lotteries like we just saw, theater, masquerade balls like you can see on the right-hand side, or everyday art like you see in this cabinet on our left, Esther's story came to life in the 17th century Netherlands. And the works together in this exhibition seek to illuminate how Queen Esther became really an admired figure for her age, a star, so to speak, and for generations to follow. So we're thrilled to share that story with you. I know many of you are very far away, but hopefully you can come visit the exhibition. So thank you so much. And I'm now going to pass it off directly to my colleague, Anna.
Thank you, Abigail. Thank you for all of you. Thank you, Abigail. It was wonderful. Do you hear me clearly? Okay.
Yes, we hear clearly.
All right. So thank you. I'm delighted to be here tonight with you. Thank you, Amedeo, for this great initiative, and also to Olga. I'm glad that we made it, something that we spoke about it for a long time. And so today we are doing a different journey. We go back to Italy and we start. On the day of her 14th birthday, Luna, daughter of Leone Ambron, Rome, signed an Esther scroll. I didn't share, I'm sorry. Okay, you see it now? Is
yes,
sharing?
we see.
Yeah?
We are seeing.
Okay. All right, go back. Okay. I have to. Sure. Okay, so on the day of her 14th birthday, Luna, daughter of Leone Ambron of Rome, signed an Esther scroll and a paired richly decorated parchment sheet containing the blessings read on Purim. This exceptional object offers an opportunity to tell the story of women's involvement in religious life and the creation of ceremonial objects at a time when men were the main family and community leaders. It is the cornerstone of an upcoming exhibition that will hopefully open for next Purim, that will highlight the Italian practice of women copying Esther scrolls, while also presenting the Ambrons, a prominent family in the Rome ghetto. In the exhibition, there will be objects mainly from the Israel Museum collection, but also some objects, a few objects on loan from different collections abroad. Today, I will focus mainly on the intriguing subject of the female scribe engaged in writing Esther scroll, contextualizing it in the vital cultural and social environment of the ghetto reality and Ambron family's influential status. Luna Ambron's scroll that we see here is made of 7 parchment sheets sewn together with the threads made of animal tendons for a total length of nearly 4 meters. It's a very big, large megillah. From the visual perspective, the parchment sheet containing the ceremonial blessing that we see here below, that are recited at the Megillah reading on Purim, shows far greater attention than the large fleshy tulips stemming along the opening text column in the Megillah here, and is the only decorative element in the Megillah. The scribal inscription, written modestly in tiny cursive Italian script, runs beneath all 4 columns, revealing crucial information for both the parchment and the Megillah. And I highlight it here, but here, if somebody wants to try to read the Hebrew, so I read in English. With the help of the wondrous God of Verdit, the writing of these blessings, together with the scroll, was completed on the 10th of Adar Rishon in the year 5527, which is February 9, 1767. All in script written as if by the hand of the Lord, who has taught the modest and gracious girl, innocent Lady Luna, daughter of the honorable gentleman Yehuda Leone Ambron. May his fortress preserve and sustain him in life as she enters her 14th year of work and her years of life. May the rise before, etc. And this is important, we go back later. May we be worthy to witness miracles and wonders speedily in our days and in her days. So Luna Ambron, a remarkable Esther scroll, signed when she was a young woman, pulled her from obscurity. And we see in the colophon a blending of personal and the communal, and actually stressed in these final words of the colophon, where Luna takes the standard blessing, he who performed miracles for our fathers may perform miracles in our times, and she changed this to this wish: may we be worthy to witness miracles and wonders speedily in our days and in her days. While we do not yet know what an exact miracle the young girl was hoping for, whether communal deliverance from outside oppression and threats of conversion, or a personal private wish, we nonetheless count ourselves lucky to have even this small glimpse into the life of this girl. And so now we keep scribing a separate sheet with a blessing and liturgical poem for the Purim service was common practice of the Italian and Sephardic rites, which strictly held to the rabbinic recommendation of not adding any text to the biblical passage copied on a scroll. Extant decorated examples of such blessing sheets are known from Italy, dating back at least from the late 17th century. We see one example. In order to better understand the great impact of Luna Ambron's work, it is necessary to have a look at the halachic implications related to the Esther scroll as the material liturgical object, and how it has been conceived in the past centuries before modern times. The writing and reading of the Esther scroll for Purim are governed by precise halachic precepts derived from the rules decided for a Torah scroll. It must be inscribed in ink on the flesh side of parchment sheets, carefully prepared, ruled and sewn together with threads made from animal sinew, the gidim, and containing only the text without vocalization and cantillation signs. And we see this in our Megillah. Unlike the strict laws, which include women from writing tefillin, mezuzah, and Torah scrolls in the Gemara, in Babylonian Talmud, Gittim, women are not explicitly forbidden from scribing an Esther scroll for ritual use. This lacuna in the halachic rabbinic tradition until the Shulchan Aruch raises various opinions. Early rabbinic legal authorities, beginning with Maimonides, do not address the question whether or not it is permissible to read from an Esther scroll copied by a woman. Therefore, it is implied that a woman is indeed permitted to scribe one intended for liturgical reading. This implication is reinforced in early modern halachic literature by reasoning that women are equally required as are men to listen to the Megillah on Purim and to remember the events recorded in the biblical account. Further support for permitting women to scribe an Esther scroll is found in the Book of Esther itself. The Queen Esther, daughter of Abigail, wrote a second. No, I didn't put. The Queen Esther, daughter of Abigail, wrote a second letter of Purim for the purpose of confirming with full authority the aforementioned one of Mordechai the Jew. The Queen had taken part in writing the laws governing the Jews and in recording the events. The renowned Rabbi David Oppenheim of Prague, who lived across the center between the 17th and the 18th century, permitted a scroll copied by his daughter, Sarah, to be used in a public reading, based on his reading of the verse that we just read in Aramaic, that translate Megillah instead of, translate the word Igeret, letter, as Megillah. This scroll did not survive, but we know about it through a dissenting opinion regarding the reading and its use. What we do have, besides Luna Ambron Esther scroll, we have another earlier scroll scribed according to halachic requirements and possibly permissible for public reading, that was signed by Stellina, daughter of Menachem of Venice, nearly 200 years before Luna was born. Actually, exactly 200 years minus 3 years. Stellina's Esther scroll is noticeable also, the earliest dated and decorated Megillah to have survived. It opens with the 3 blessings recited on Purim on the scroll, so it's not as a separate blessing sheet as we have in Luna case, and followed by the biblical book, and closes with an extended scribal inscription that we see here, revealing the scribe's name and the date and place of completing the manuscript. Her father and grandfather's name are accompanied by high official community titles, the officials, and their elevated social status is further stressed by the family coat of arms in the very final panel of the scroll. It's very difficult to identify, and there's some suggestion about the origin of the family, but it's not yet completely confirmed. The open and running arcade that highlights the text columns, like Stellina's scroll, became the main decorative motif in later decorated megillot throughout the centuries, suggesting an artistic language that was common to the genre, and indeed is found in our Luna Ambron blessing sheet. So we have this example, or the example, and then a third Esther scroll, assumed to have been copied by a woman, is testified by another outstanding blessing sheet that bears the signature of Camilla, daughter of Moshe Ephraim de Rossi, that she's done in a much concise form. And if there was a companion Megillah to Camilla's blessing sheet, it has not survived or remains unknown to us. So Luna and Camilla were clearly instructed how to write and sign so artfully. We see that we operated in a difference of 3 years. The type, scope, and quality of education these young women received was remarkable, whether by family members or by private tutor under a home education model of schooling, which was predominant at the time. We are left to wonder whether they were outliers or whether the fact they acted in so close proximity, both in time and geography, indicates that it was not an exception in these years for girls to be thus educated. Since most extant megillot and blessing sheets do not identify their scribe, at the present time both possibilities remain feasible, regardless of how commonplace the practice was. The fact remains that both the Ambron and the Rossi families educate or encourage the daughters to produce an important liturgical object that thematically focuses on the Jewish identity of the biblical queen. It also bears considered that Jewish education received by young women and men and women in the ghetto of Rome was at least in part a reaction and a counterforce to the pressure of the local Christian clergy, who were tireless in their attempts to convert these Jewish youth forcibly. Jews were forced weekly to listen to long preachers, and numerous were cases of conversos who denounced their, like other Jewish who converted to Christianity, who denounced their relatives that expressed the will to convert too. This was in the good case. As pointed, that was like people who expressed the will. As pointed by historians like the colleague Marina Caffiero and Serena Di Nepi, it is clear that staunch Jewish education was a way for Jewish families to help their children gain and maintain their Jewish identity in the face of both temptation and threat. This was especially important for the young women who bore the responsibility of bearing and raising the next generations of Jewish. Scribing a complete scroll as Tellina, Luna, and Camilla is a complex project. One rendered even more notably by the artistic value of each of the scrolls. While we can't yet trace the family of Tellina and Camilla with certainty, through my research it was possible to capture together several objects that could help tracing Ambron's family community and environment. Luna Ambron's work helped paint the portrait of a family who were a significant part of the community in which they lived. First of all, we noticed in our blessing sheets the Ambron family device, a rampant lion beneath a crescent moon upon a blue field, dominates twice symmetrically the upper cornice. The Ambrons were a prominent family of Sephardic origins who settled in Rome following the 1492 expulsion from Spain. They maintained their connection to their Sephardic roots and in Rome were affiliated with the Catalan synagogue, La Scuola Catalana, the largest and wealthiest of the Rome ghetto synagogues. By the mid-17th century, the Ambrons were already documented as prominent bankers who had become affluent through their trade of spices and textile. The Ambron's occupation evolved to include the sale of antiquities, improving furnishing and decorative items to Roman high societies, as well as diplomatic visitors of the Christian clergy in the international Pope city. The Ambrons were granted special privileges as a token of appreciation for the services they provided. Okay. This special permission to conduct business outside the ghetto and family members were also written that the members were not required to carry the yellow badge identifying them as a Jewish. There are several surviving documents which provide precious testimony regarding the business affairs of the Ambron family, covering over a century of family history, ranging from 1687-1804. And we see here one of the examples that will be displayed also in the exhibition. There are pen on parchment in Latin or in Italian, in this case is Italian, opulently adorned in gold ink. And we see that this specific document was conferred to Gabriele, Leone, and Sabato Ambron, the three brothers. Leone is the father of Luna Ambron, so it means that this kind of documents specifically, and this one was from 1756, which is about 10 years before, earlier than Luna Megillah. And Gabriele, on the other hand, the uncle, is the groom of this beautiful ketubah that we see here, and that is also in the collection of the Israel Museum. And this marriage was celebrated in 1734, and it's one of the most splendid ketubot from Rome extant, and for sure in our collection. And this artistic style of this ketubah and also of the documents of the Ambron makes suppose that the artist of the ketubah, in this case, was familiar with the artistic environment that produced such documents as the Ambrons, and also makes suppose that the same artistic environment, the artist who for the moment remains anonymous for us, the artist of the Megillah of Luna, was also inspired by the same entourage. So from the family of Luna's mother, Simcha, daughter of Samuel Korkos. Also, we have to reconstruct a little background, because also the Korkos were a notorious family of scholars and also wealth influential family in the ghetto of Rome. And they came settled in Rome from the Castilian from Spain, and settled in Rome, and they were very prominent also in the ghetto. An important connection to our discussion today is the text published in Italian by the well-known Rabbi Tranquillo Manor Vito Korkos, who led the yeshiva for young students and was chief rabbi in Rome, and was also a relative of Luna Ambron's mother. This is a short compendium of brief rhetoric sermons on the question of new beginnings begotten by endings, given by his pupils on occasion of Purim. It is clear, therefore, that Luna Ambron was born to two families of valued scholarly pursuit, and it raises the question whether this was a factor in providing her an education that seemed to parallel the education given to the men and the Korkos family, to the men also of the Korkos Ambron families. As for the act of scribing an Esther scroll, it is a creative endeavor that requires both manual skills and intellectual level, a blending of the personal and the common. And so, from her strict family circle to the wider context of the small yet vital communities circumscribed in the Rome ghetto and the relationship with the surrounding Christian majority environment, I try today to draw a little context that might have facilitated or even encouraged such an endeavor as scribing an Esther scroll. So I hope to see you next year in Jerusalem for the exhibition and to see many, many other important items. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Now I think I give the
yes,
word
yes,
to
yes. Give me back the floor. Thank you so much, Anna, and also to Abigail for this amazing exhibition of New York, and also we are waiting for the exhibition of Israel Museum next year. We went very, very long, and so I will do as much as I can to be strict in my presentation of the exhibition of Ferrara. Let's share my presentation like this. Okay, I hope that please sign me that you are seeing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So this Bellissima Esther is our exhibition that is the second exhibition after the exhibition that was held in Roma the last years. And I thought to share with you not the exhibition itself, but just a couple of information about the scrolls that are set up and displayed at our exhibition here in Ferrara, letting you to the people who want to remain with us at the end of my presentation, a trailer about the exhibition as a whole. And therefore, I wanted to tell you that the aim of this exhibition was the same of Roma. It means to tell the story of a woman who saved the people, and also the hidden identity, the multiple readings about the story, and how the story influenced not just the Jewish communities, but also the society itself, as the story of Esther was taken as model of a minority that survives inside the majority in the society, and also as a model of good behaviors about the people of the protagonist of the story, as like Esther and Mordecai, that are a civic figure, and how also this story inspired vowels, arts, paintings, and fashion and trends like the wedding chest boxes for textile that during the 15th and the 16th centuries was common to give as gift for the couple that getting married. And this is just one of the side of the exhibition. The other side that you will see through the trailers. It's also the important itinerary about the Purim Sheni, the parallel Purim, the local Purim, as perhaps you know, that commemorate the salvation of people, salvation of Jewish communities, as well as the salvation of little families. And so we made a selection of local Purims from north to south, telling to the visitors feelings, stories about heat aches or fire burnt or other things that could happen inside the gate, outside the gate, to families and Jewish communities that I wanted to mandate to give to the heirs to celebrate years after years. But focusing just on the scrolls that are displayed in our exhibition, that I remind you, the curator are the Olga Melasecchi, as was presented at the beginning, the Professoressa Caffiero, and me, with the collaboration of Sharon Reichel, and with the setup, the design of the exhibition of the architect Giulia Gallerani in Nafa Museum, and it's on display until 20 of July of 2025. So you have time. Also, all the people who is planning a journey here in Italy is invited to don't lose this opportunity of seeing our exhibition. Let's begin with let's begin with this. That is the main scroll that we are displaying in our exhibition. We wanted something that connect us, the scrolls of Esther, with our city of Ferrara. And as perhaps many of you knows, that there are 3 artifacts made by Mosè Pescarol, active in Ferrara at the beginning of the 17th century for a decade, more or less, and produce at least 3 artifacts, 3 scrolls of Esther that right now are 2 of them in public libraries, one of them that is given to us as loan in our exhibition came from the National Library of Jerusalem. Another one is on Ryland Library in Manchester, and the third is on private belongs. But it is one of the most famous artifacts among the Esther scrolls. As you can see, it's not engraving, but is painted with lavishing colors and sketches, scenes of the history of Esther. And at the end, there is the colophon. As you can see, Maaseh Yedeh Tzair, Zair, Moshe, Ben Kemar, Abraham, Pescarol, Zichrono Livracha, Shanaz. This is the year. It means that is on 1617. Po Kiryat Ferrara was made here in Ferrara. The interesting thing about this scroll is that there are some scenes that are very, very important and can be also an experience about his time of how to fulfill some of the precepts of Esther and also of the Jewish life at all. For example, this is the tale of the fast of Esther and Mordecai before coming in front of Ahasuerus, and you see the scene of inside the synagogue where all the people are fasting, are wearing the taledot, are wearing also the phylacters. Is one of the real rare scenes about the laces of the phylacteries of the tefillin on the arms of the people, for example. And this one of the rare scenes also of the inside the synagogue. Yes, it's true that we have other scenes by manuscripts, but the beginning of the 17th century, this is one of the scenes, and perhaps could be also the scene of the inside of synagogue in Ferrara. As well is important also another kind of project of Mosè Pescarol. For example, to be inspired not just by the text that on the bottom of the scenes, It means the Book of Esther, but also how is read the Book of Esther by the Midrash, Yalkut Shimoni, Midrash Rabbah. For example, I want to dedicate just a couple of words about this scene that is the triumph of Mordecai, brought by Haman on the street of Shushan, and as you can see on the right side, at the bottom, there is a scene of a woman. This woman is the daughter of Haman, that, as we know by the Gemara, was on the window seeing what is happening, and she thought that the man on the horses was his father, and the other was Mordecai, and mistakes and pours by the windows garbage up onto the man standing, and instead of giving garbage to Mordecai, gives upon to his father, and is something that we know just by the Midrash and not by the Book of Esther. Other scrolls that we put on the exhibition, I wanted to dedicate just one thing about these scrolls. Abigail have spoken about Shalom d'Italia, and we had also through a loan, and we are grateful about the loan that gave us the Casale Monferrato Jewish Museum. This is a scroll made and engraved by Shalom d'Italia, our Italian artist that we lent to Amsterdam for a decade, no more than a decade, because after the 40s of the 17th centuries, he came back in Italy, was born in Mantova, as Abigail told you, and all the items, all the artifacts about Shalom d'Italia are spread out in the world, but few of them, a couple of them are still in Italy, and we are proud of it. One is on Casale Monferrato, and we had this loan in our exhibition. And this is the detail of the scroll made by Shalom d'Italia. Just a few words I want to dedicate to this Esther scroll, and the story is like this. About 2 decades ago, I went to Bologna Jewish community because they wanted to restore some of their Sifrei Torah. And among them, I found out this scroll that was in a quite good condition, but not ready to be read because of some faded letter. And I wanted to repair it and to restore it. By the way, I realized that this scroll was quite ancient, and by the paleographic features and by also other codicological features, I found out that perhaps was written at the end of the 16th century, beginning of the 15th century and beginning of the 16th century. I mean, the first decade, perhaps, of the 15 and something, I don't know, the first decade. Therefore, and another amazing thing is that, as you can see, there was an attempt to begin a decoration. You can see by these details, at the end of the Megillah, there are some drawing, and after they filled the drawing with the colors that are colors of the Renaissance, and they began to decorate, to illuminate, to make an illumination to the scroll by the end of the scrolls. Through the beginning of the scroll, they didn't, we don't know why, they didn't finish the job, but it's amazing why, because we know that the illumination of Italian scrolls that are from the beginners of this experience began just by the middle of the 16th century. Estellina, we know that was on the Stellina that Anna spoke about, was written and decorated in the middle of the 16th century on the 64 of the 1564, and therefore could be, and we are quite sure that this scroll gonna be the first illuminated scroll produced in Italy. And the amazing thing is that after the restoration of the scroll, right now is on use at the Jewish community on Bologna. And in Bologna, they are using nowadays a scroll goes back to the 6th centuries ago and is still kosher, is still readable, and is still in use. And I think this is an amazing thing. And they loan us the scroll for the exhibition, and at the end of the exhibition, this will go back to the Jewish community for another hundred of years of celebration of Purim in this Jewish community of Emilia-Romagna. So, before ending this my short exhibition, I invite everybody to come to visit our exhibition that is on display until the middle of July. And for the people, now I want to share with you the people who want to leave the event, that's fine. The people who want to join and to share with us the trailers about the exhibition that is about 4 minutes, not more, can share with us the exhibition. And it's like a preview, because our exhibition will develop and will be a virtual exhibition on the website of the MEIS, together with these trailers that I'm going to show you. And if there are no, I don't know, if there are no questions, I think that we can finish right now. Thank you for okay, no, I don't think that there are questions. Rachel, confirm me that there are no questions about the presentation and about also the event. So remain to me just to thanks Gianna Portecorboli, Vice President of the MEIS France Museum, to Anna Nizza from the Israel Museum, as well to Abigail Rapoport from the Jewish Museum. And I hope the collaboration among our institution, and specifically among the Jewish museum in the world, will be always much more strong and continuous. And thank you for participating to our event. And that's it. So please, Rachel, you can begin the trailer. Benvenuti a sorte, la giornata sul sito.
So thank you so much. See you soon in New York, Jerusalem, and Ferrara. Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you so much, Abigail. And thank you so much to everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you to you. Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Gianna. Bye-bye.